you'll hit on something that no one's ever asked before that really needed to be conversed about. That was just the right moment and the right time for you. It was the right moment and the right time for the majority of your audience as well, because they are along for the ride, especially if they're binge listening to you. They're right there with you and they're ready for you to ask that question.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
What's up, podcaster? It's your host, Adam Adams. And today we're with Tracy Hazzard from The Binge Factor. So she's got a podcast really that helps people learn what is it going to take in order to get somebody, my avatar, my listener, to binge listen. Now, there's a difference between if you just get somebody to check out an episode versus where they can't get enough of your episode. And I think about movies, or I guess shows would be the best way to explain this. Shows where I cannot leave my screen ever. I think that I'm going to watch an episode or two. And then I end up 6 episodes later, 6 hours later, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. That's what we are talking about when we call binge. And so with Tracy today on the show, we're going to talk about one of the big mistakes that you probably make and you need to stop. We're going to talk about video, if it's good or bad, what's trending and what you ought to be doing. And then we'll talk a little bit more just about being binge-worthy. So first and foremost, Tracy, what is that thing that we're making the mistake of, or most of us probably are, especially when we are first launching a podcast?
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, we're thinking about ourselves, right? Isn't that always the way that we start an enterprise, we write a book, we start a podcast, we do these things and we're thinking about our business and ourselves, but we forget that somebody else has to be the recipient. Somebody's on that other side. And if we truly want to be binge-worthy, we have to take them into consideration.
So how do we do that? And what is the difference? How do you know if you're doing that? Because, real quick, I think that the listener probably assumes that they have to talk a little bit about themselves. They have to have some stories in order to have somebody follow them and be interested. If they never mention that, for example, that they have a business, then maybe they couldn't have anyone hire them. So how do we focus more on the listener and put the focus on them, but also get value ourselves?
Well, look, we have a unique selling proposition, whatever it is, or a unique reason for doing something, our why. And if we're doing something and that why has a true value in it, that's what we should be focused on. So if my reason for putting something out there is to help my audience learn how to grow their business with podcasting, for example, right? And that's my purpose of doing it. That's my purpose, right? But what's in it for them is their business is more successful. Their business is growing. That's what's in it for them. That's what they're out there looking for. So that's what I'm thinking about when I'm doing my show, when I'm developing everything. I'm thinking more about what's in their head that they're out there searching for and looking for, more than what I want to give them, because they may not be ready for what I'm giving them yet. So where's their problem and where is the solutions that they're looking for? And I want to position everything that I do thinking about what they are interested in, because podcasting is a pull media. It's not a push media. I cannot push my podcast into their face. There is no way in the app for me to force my podcast to be seen by somebody, but there is a way for them to search for something and find me. So that means they don't know me yet. They don't know to search for Tracy Hazzard. They don't know to search for Adam Adams. Right? They don't know us. So the more space I waste talking about myself, the worse my outcome will be in that media.
Is there a level that is acceptable or agreeable for us as business owners who, let's say, we definitely want to be focused on the right person? Definitely want to be thinking about what they're going through and how to help them overcome it. And we want to be able to use our own stories to help persuade and support them to make that next step and hopefully make money ourselves.
Yeah, I call it my 1, 2, 3. The first step in the process is to make sure that you're focused on that listener, what they need, where they are, getting them at the place that they're looking, right? Getting them at that moment in time in the place where they're looking. Thinking about that, that's my number one focus. My number two focus is to make sure that I'm a great guide for them. And that's where I talk about things. So that's when I say, I'm your guide because I'm uniquely suited to bring you along on this journey because, right? And that's my focus. My focus isn't my resume. My focus is I'm your guide. I'm your guide because I've started 6 podcasts and I've done over 3,000 interviews and I've done this, right? That's why I can give you this advice and it's valuable. And then I can use those examples when I'm talking, but it's not, you should listen to me because I know so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and because I worked for this great company. That doesn't tell me why you're going to help me, the listener. We need to make it relevant and related. And then the third thing is what can they expect as an outcome? So if I listen to your show, I'm going to create a better business. I'm going to create a better marketing plan. I'm going to create something better on the other side of it, which is the outcome that I desire. Those 3 pieces, if we're always thinking about that, everything we do from building the way our show looks on the app, our description that we put in the app, every episode that we decide to air, the guests we have on, the topics we have on, they're all going to be a right fit and they're going to be binge-worthy at the end of the day.
I love it. I'm making some good notes on that. So I'm noticing with these 3 things, the 1, 2, 3, which are who they are, basically who they are, where they are, what they need, what they're looking for, etc. Number 2, I'm just the guide. I'm the one who's going to help you get there. And then you made sure to say, because XYZ, I'm going to get you to that place that you want to be. And the reason it's me is because I've got this credibility that can support you. And the third was, what can they expect as an outcome? And I thought it was interesting. Let me ask you this real quick. Is it go in chronological order, 1, 2, 3, or they happen simultaneously, or?
So thinking about building a opening paragraph to your description, right? The show description. That's exactly how we do it. We do sentence 1, sentence 2, sentence 3, just like I said it. We also do it throughout the whole 4,000 character description, which most people don't utilize on their podcast, which is a mistake because podcasting at the end of the day is the app is a search engine. So you got to use your maximum character count. So let's use all 4,000 characters, but we plan it out the same way. So while we do a paragraph that people actually read, the rest of them a bot reads. So we still want to cover, where are you? Where are your problems? All those keywords that you might be typing in looking for solutions, those all need to be in the rest of the 4,000 characters. So we do it in that order. And that is key and critical because as a listener, I'm thinking about me first. And then I'm like, do I trust you? That's the second question that comes in my head. And are you going to get me where I want to go? That's the way my brain is working. So if my brain is working that way as a listener or viewer or someone checking out your show, I want to have my information put in that way right as that thought comes to my head.
Yeah. The way that I've been having clients do their the trailer episode number 0 is basically the same format that you're using. It wasn't in the exact order, but I might change it. Let me just look at it. So we always did it where step 1 was call out your avatar, essentially the same that you got. Tell them who they are. Tell them that you know that that's the person, where they are, what they're looking for, etc. So the first thing was always call out the avatar. The second was to give them the big promise. That's your third thing. What can they expect as the outcome? And then my third thing is your second thing, and I might switch it. And that was, why would they listen to me? What's different about me? What's unique about this show? And you put it, I'm the guide and I'm going to get you there because I'm the best to get you to that place. And
the reason we switch it is just a psychological reason. We switch it is we're sandwiching you in between that because I want to end on them again. So I want to end strong with this outcome that they're looking for. So even if I don't want to end on me. I want to end on them again. So that's why we sandwich it in the middle.
I like it. So again, if you want to make sure that you're not making this mistake that gets a lot of people to not have listeners, and honestly, it's very tough to get listeners. Maybe 10-ish% of podcasts are starting to get 300 or more downloads per episode. So it's going to take some time and effort in order to be able to get in front of the right person. So Tracy has this idea for you today that is make it all about your listener. So today I want to make this all about you because you're listening, you're checking this out, and I want you to have the value. And you should be doing that for your listener as well. And she gave us a formula of how to do that. Call them out. Number one, be the guide and tell them what you can do to help them. And then the third is what can they expect as an outcome? What is going to benefit them? And do you
And it's
remember?
okay.
Oh, go ahead,
I just
Tracy.
want to say this. Yeah. It's okay if you're not the expert in something. You don't have to be a guide that's an expert. When I started my very first podcast on 3D printing, I was not an expert in 3D printing. In fact, I really rarely ran the machine. My partner did. But I was curious. So it's okay as long as you're steps ahead. Your curiosity and your deep interest in something can be the reason they're joining you along for the ride. So it's okay to not be an expert in something and be a host of a show. I just want to be really clear with that. Your enthusiasm is just as valuable.
Yeah. And you have a lot of it. I started a real estate show when I had only done a handful of real estate transactions. I started real estate investing in 2005. And by 2016, I had only done a handful, 5 or 6 different things, like random things. And I launched a show called Creative Real Estate Podcast. And when launching that show, I definitely did not feel like the expert. I knew more than a lot of people, but I did not know most of the experts. Most of the people that were teaching it, I was still learning from them. And I would bring them on my show. And I would have the enthusiasm, just like you're talking about, bring them on the show, I'd ask the questions. So I'd try to add the value all about them. This is our first idea today, all about the listener. I'd try to add value. I'd try to be there for the ride. And I think some of the key things for me in that moment was to make sure that I was being as authentic as possible. Meaning, if I hadn't done something, I didn't want to speak from experience. I want to say that I heard it. If I was interviewing somebody and they had barely taught me something, I wouldn't want to act like I knew it already. I would want to go ahead and say, wow, it's interesting. I'm going to look that up. So that you want to be authentic for sure in all things, especially when you have a podcast. And if you're not the guide or the hero or the expert, really. And if you are playing that role of the expert, when you don't know something, Tracy, let's go there. If you basically are the best at something or really, really good at something or have a lot to say, most people in your genre, and you end up not knowing something, how should you act about that?
So look, we're all learning. There's always a stage of learning. And it is a better place to come from a state of curiosity than it is to come from a state of expertise. It always is that way. If you ask better questions, you're going to get better answers. And it's always the way, no matter what stage we're in. So I think that that's my approach always, no matter what show I am in, I always have something new to learn. And because of that, I might be 10 steps ahead of my current listener because I'm farther ahead in my journey than they are. But if I'm closer to where they are, they're looking for us to ask the right question that they need. And that's our opportunity. Our opportunity is to make sure we're asking it at the right levels for the audience we have. So if we are truly an expert and we have lots of experts following us, then we have to ask those expert questions and we can't let it go and assume that everyone does know. That's where we run into trouble. So even if we think we know, clarify. And that's always a great way to do it, is to say, hey, I've heard this. This is the way that I've always tried this. But what's your approach? Now you're getting a broader view on something. That is helpful. And it also you might learn something and you could say, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way. I'm going to have to try that and let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I get advice on my show. I had Dave Jackson on my show. Dave Jackson is like an OG of podcasting. And I completely disagreed with him on something. Like I was like, Dave, I'm going to try this because you're really an expert and I respect you. But I don't think it's going to work for me. That's an okay place to be as well. So you can always do that in your post follow-up. You can always do it on a future episode and say, I took this advice and I really tried it, but I had trouble applying it. It just really didn't work. And here's why I think it's not the approach to take.
Yeah.
So you can have a disagreement like that with somebody who's in your industry because you're at the same level, but you got to explain yourself. And you also have to give them the respect and benefit of the doubt for where they are.
Curious, you've done over 3,000 episodes now where you've interviewed people. And I would say 3,000 interviews at least. I don't know if they've all been published.
They haven't all been episodes. Yeah.
So, but 3,000 interviews in all of this time of extracting information and adding value and getting to the bottom of things. What are some of the takeaways that you've pulled out that can help us, if we're listening, to be able to be better at interviewing and getting to the bottom of things and helping add value?
So to me, interviewing is about listening. And that's really where most people go wrong. They have their set list of questions, or they've got this all pre-prepared. And I like to prepare. I want to, like, when I had you on my show, I listened to your show, right? I knew what it was like. So I want to get a sense of those things. You want to do some amount of research and understanding. I don't like to go into something completely cold without a perspective of what's unique. I mean, if I invite you on my show, I have a purpose for it. So there's something unique there, a connection I need to make for my audience, because I'm being audience focused, right? I want to make sure I give them the best value. And if I missed out on something because I didn't do my homework, that's not good. So that's an important place to come. But over-preparing with questions means we tend to not listen. We're just worried about when are we going to squeeze in this next question and how are we going to fit this in here? And we're not actively listening to what's going on. So most often we fail to ask the follow-up question, to deeper dive, because we weren't truly listening. That's what I believe my audience likes from me. They like that I won't let something go. They like that I will say, wait a second, we've tried that before and that didn't work. Tell me why it's working for you. What are you doing that's different? This will force them to delve and explain. That's a deeper conversation level that you're getting into. And that's one of the things that I think most people, they don't want a superficial interview. It doesn't do anything for you. The host doesn't make you look like you're good at what you do. It doesn't do anything for the guests because they don't get into what's unique. You just ask you the same question 12 other interviewers asked them. And it doesn't do it for your audience who's really looking for those insights that only you can provide them. That's why you're their unique guide.
Yeah. That takeaway that you're mentioning about how we can miss the boat if we are thinking about or have prepared all of this list of questions, because I've done that too many times and I've seen clients do that. Other podcasters do that same thing many, many times. I certainly try not to. I do understand it. I have been on both sides and I feel like it's easier to do than anyone really knows, even if you're kind of experienced with podcasting, to be like, your guest is finishing up a thought and you're like, okay, cool. Now I can go to that next question. But instead we should be not thinking about the next question, but just thinking about what they're saying and try to hear some of that stuff that's like, oh, let's go deeper onto that. Or how did that happen? Or he said he did this, but how did he do that? Or he said that he did this, but what did it do?
Well,
was it even valuable? Let's go into that.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you're almost checked out of the conversation. And this is a conversation, right? We're having an active conversation. We have the best interest. I mean, there's no reason for you to have a guest on who just like is a taker and not have the best interest of the audience in the process. If they are, don't invite them on and don't air the episode. But we want to have this model of a good conversation going. And if we're curious and interested in how that worked, or if it's something that we're filing away going, I'm going to ask that after we close on the air, you just missed an opportunity. You should have asked that on the air. Yeah. Even if you edited it out later, like chose to do that, that's okay. I mean, on occasion you meander into something that you didn't mean to, but for most often you won't. You'll hit on something that no one's ever asked before, that really needed to be conversed about, that was just at the right moment and the right time for you. It was the right moment and the right time for the majority of your audience as well. Because they are along for the ride, especially if they're binge listening to you. They are along for the ride. They're right there with you and they're ready for you to ask that question. But if we checked ourselves out and we're like thinking too much about the structure of our show and the structure of things, look, I usually have 3 to 5 bullet points that I write down from something just to I don't forget, because I do a lot of interviews in a week, right? So I just want to make sure that I know I'm talking to you. I've got my 5 bullet points out of things I want to touch on. If I only get to 3 of them, fine. It's not going to bother me. I don't have to squeeze it all in, because I know that we must have filled the conversation around those 3 in a rich way. But I also don't want to go, oh God, we still have 10 minutes left. And I feel like this was too, and not have something that I could focus on. So that's why I do it. So, and I make them bullet points, not questions, so that I don't also pre-format it, because sometimes it doesn't follow up to what you just said. It's not a why question. It should be a how question. So by not doing that, by just putting what it is that I want to talk about, it helps me then have to think about that question, which means I have to listen to the last thing you just said to me, which forces me into the conversation.
I want to go into this piece that you just mentioned a moment ago. You said you do a lot of interviews each week or per week. With doing a lot of interviews, I want to ask first and foremost, how many episodes are you doing each week? Is it vary? I'm saying binge, but I
batch.
really mean
Yeah.
batch.
Do I batch record?
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about just like how many you're doing.
Yeah. So, typically I'll do batches before a holiday, like we are right now. I'll do 2 to 3 at a time because I know I'm going to take a couple weeks where I'm not recording any. My goal is to usually do at least 2 interviews a week. I record 3 episodes of different shows that I have. So I have a show called Feed Your Brand. It's done in a live stream model, but I have to prepare the topic. And so I do a preparation for that. I'm doing a live stream, but I'm also coaching my clients at the same time. So I'm preparing and doing multiple things with it. I'm promoting my company, I'm promoting my show, I'm recording my show, and I'm helping my clients all in one fell swoop. So it's very efficient use of my time. But that one I prepare every single week. And then I do 2 interviews only because I want to make sure I've got enough batched up and recorded. And I like to get a couple months ahead on every show that I do. I like to do that because we like to do a lot of prep up to make sure we're promoting them well. So I kind of try to keep up with about 2 a week. Do I always air 2 a week? No, sometimes I'll air 1. It just depends on the pace of what we're doing. If I get too far beyond about 6 weeks out in recording, so like if I've got I'm now going to start airing things for March and it's December, I'm like, oh, that's too far in advance. And I'll double up and air a couple of extra episodes in a week, and I'll give my listeners bonuses. I do not want to be too far out from a promotion standpoint and an energy standpoint for my guest. So it's some model that I do, but I want the best guest at a moment in time when it's rich. So if I meet someone, I want them on my show, and I don't want to lose the momentum of it, and I don't want to have an extended amount of time. So I don't restrict my calendar to 1 per week, even though that's my minimum that I want to air. I don't restrict my calendar because I want to squeeze some of these extra people in when the moment's right. Because my model is about as much network and relationship building in the guesting side as it is in the listener building side. I want to have both be layered for me and important to me personally. Otherwise, it doesn't keep me energized enough for the show. I got to learn as much as my audience does for me to keep energized in it.
Why do you record multiple episodes a week? You said some of the why, which is basically you want to get ahead of the game. But let's ask, from a business standpoint, what is the benefit of recording multiple episodes every single week?
So look, there's no question about it that podcasting can be a great lead generator for your business. So the more people you talk to, the more sales calls you're going to have eventually, right? So for me, I'm not looking to actually sell every single podcaster who comes on my show and talks with me, right? That's too much work. If it is, I should have a 7-day-a-week model. I need to sell way more than that, but I'm also not the salesperson in my company. I have a team for that. So my goal is to talk to the people who might be influence many. So if I can talk to someone who might be a conduit to a speaking engagement, or who might be a conduit to bringing me a network of shows, something where I could build a long-term relationship with them on, where we are exchanging in that model, then I want to squeeze them into my show. I don't want to just have great podcasters who are doing something interesting where my listeners can learn from. I need to also network and build my business. Yeah. And so I've got to have more per week to make sure I'm accomplishing both.
And at the end of an episode, if we are somebody who's got a coaching, a consulting, a product or service, if we're somebody who's got a business and we can make money for our business through our listener and maybe even the guest that we have on the show in case we end up working together, what is a good strategy that we could implement to make sure that we're having the highest probability of being able to start doing business with maybe somebody that we brought onto our show?
So first off, tease it at the beginning, but save it till the end. So a lot of times because I'm interviewing a podcaster, I'll go and I'll take a look at their show in the apps and I'll notice they're not using the 4,000 character description. Their cover art has their picture all over it, which isn't a very outwardly focused model, right? Some of these things that they might be doing, and it's physically showing as a mistake or a rookie error, even though they are pro and they've been doing this for a while. Or their episode numbers are all wonky, or it's missing, or something happened like that. So I notice it and I say, hey, I was looking up your show and I noticed there's something really weird going on with your episodes. Do you have a few minutes at the end of our call? I want to get right into our interview, but do you have a few minutes at the end so I can, show you what I'm seeing and help you find the solution to that? They're thinking about it. They're going, oh, heck yeah, I'm making time for that. Like, I don't want to have a mistake on my show, whatever it might be. Now, I'm not being mean about it or anything. I'm just kind of politely pointing it out and say, if you have a few minutes, if you don't, I'll make some time for you or send you a video as a follow-up. Like, it's okay if they don't. But then I serve. Then we do our interview. We build a great rapport. They start to see by the comments that I'm making that I'm obviously very knowledgeable about what I do. So now they're even more receptive to my comments and my criticism that I might be making about this, or the critique, if you want to call it that. And so now typically as soon as the record button ends, they go, you said this thing about my show. What's going on with that? Like they'll start in before I even have to say anything.
Awesome.
And that's how we do it here. Now, if we run out of time and something happens, and it does happen, then I'll say, I promised you this. I'm going to send you my tip video that I send to all my clients. I'm going to send that to you right away in an email. And then if you want to book another call, here's my calendar. Or usually it'll be, my partner is absolutely the expert in this. He's the expert in real estate podcasts. We have the largest segment of real estate podcasts on our network. And he could do an appraisal of your show for free and go through all of the little technical details if you want. Would you like a link for that? That's how we do it. And that's how I hand it off to a sales conversation without ever having one.
Like that. So tease it in the beginning, but do what in the end?
But provide the value in the end. So if you've got something that I'm going to give them something that they can tangibly walk away with, read, use, do, something like that, that's very tangible. And then an invitation to a follow-up conversation. And at that point, I'm going to decide, is the conversation going to be with me or am I going to offer my team? I'm going to mention it right there so it doesn't sound like a handoff later. It doesn't sound like oh, so much. Thanks for coming on my show. Yeah, here's my sales team. I want to make that set that tone that might be what I do with them. So that what happens.
Let's pretend that our listener is a securities attorney with the SEC. And or not with the SEC, but hopefully.
Yeah, that would be bad. I was like, I don't think they should be.
So let's just say that they are a securities attorney and they are bringing on people that raise capital for buying businesses or buying real estate. And one thing that they might be able to do prior to the interview itself is they would go perhaps to the social media of the host or the guest, regardless if they're on somebody else's show or if they're coming on their show. They would listen to a couple of episodes of a podcast, or they would go onto the social media. They would do a little bit of research like you do, Tracy, on that person, get a feel for that person, have a couple bullet points to talk about ready. And it sounds like be armed with at least one thing that person might be doing wrong or could be doing better to get a better result somehow. So in this case, it's a securities attorney and they saw that somebody said, hey, anybody who wants to go $100,000 into this deal, let me know. And then they might come out and just mention, hey, you had a post on social that breaks securities law. I'd love to walk you through the way of making that work so you can actually have that. We could do it to the end. So that's basically planting a seed.
And if it's a common thing, like if it's something that recurs again and again. So like, look, I've got, this model for how we write our episode descriptions to be 4,000 characters and how we do it. And we do it with our voice. And so I have a tip and I'm happy to send this to your listeners and to you, right? Like I have this tip that we utilize that is our 15-minute exercise, we call it, for writing the description. I can send that to them as a follow-up and say, hey, this is really critically important. If you want to know why, if you have more questions about this, or if this isn't working for you, reach out to me. But I really want to send this to you because I think you're going to get yourself in some hot water and I'm concerned about you. When someone says that who's FINRA regulated, you should be listening to them, right?
Yeah.
So it has more weight. But if you set it at the beginning, they're distracted by all of that. And you don't want to distract with all of that. Just say, hey, I was checking out your social media. I'd love to give you some feedback on some things. You leave it light at the beginning. And then when you are done with it, you've built this rapport. They felt your expertise. You also gave. So there's a law of reciprocity going on there. And you say, hey, we have a support program that can help you with this. But here's what I'm seeing for you here. But if you would like further support, we've got a program for that. Or we've got something else can help you. Just reach out to me. Happy to let you know more about that. You're inviting a sales opportunity and sales conversation. You're not insisting on it. You're not making it as criteria. This happens a lot with guests, with guesting models. You're making it a requirement that I have a sales conversation with you to be a guest on your show. That's not okay. And it's not good for you as the host of that show to have that be the model, because then you're not discerning enough for your audience. You'll take anyone because you want more sales conversations instead of the right.
Yeah. Quick question that you mentioned a couple of times, that we should use all 4,000 characters or close to all 4,000 characters possible in our description. And just now it sounds like it's specific to each episode. It's an episode description, not the description of the whole show. Is that right?
No, I mean the whole show. The whole show has a 4,000 character. Your episode description is big, and people don't even use a portion of it, but it's not as searchable and as rich in the app, so it's not going to help you as much. Your episode title is more important, and the opening paragraph. So I'd say 1,000 characters is probably more important to you in the beginning of it, making sure you have links, making sure you have the link to your show website, to your real website. Stop linking out to your hosting company's website. Stop linking out to Apple and Spotify, because people are listening in Apple and Spotify. They don't need another link out to it. It doesn't work. Don't waste your space with that. Use your space for your promoting your business, your guests, their books, the things that you really want referral links quick and handy to a listener.
Yeah. In a sec, we're going to get into the video, because we want to find out if we should be using video or not. And prior to that, I want to kind of share back a couple of things that I'm hearing from you so far. And one of those things is that we want the show to be all about the listener. We do that by figuring out who they are and how to serve them by doing the 1, 2, 3, which is identifying the avatar, getting granular on all of the things that they're going through and need. The second one is to be the guide and let them know that we can take them to that place that they want because we are XYZ, explain the rest. And the third is to share with them what they can expect by listening to our podcast or by hiring us or whatever the context is, because this can be used in multiple places. And you mentioned that these 3 things help the person answer 3 questions internally. Is it me that they're talking about? Yes or no? Do I trust the host of this podcast? Yes or no? And then finally, where do we want to go? Where do I want to go? Should I go to that place? And that allows them to kind of self-select and stay along for the journey. And to use all 4,000 calories, I must be eating, I must be hungry, characters in their show description so that they can get the most amount of search engine optimization.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, everything is optimization, right? Because we can be amazing. We can be the best host ever. We can ask the best questions. We can have people love us and we are so energetic. But if they never click the button because no bot decided we were worthy of being served up as an option to them, then we're not doing our job. So we have to play to the bots, especially in an AI-driven world. And we have to be wonderful, authentic personalities as well. Both things have to go hand in hand.
I got 3 really cool quotes that came out from you. Number 1, talking about how many episodes you do per week, because I think that the listener needs to understand as a podcast host that they ought to be doing more. The second one is, if we want to sell and support our guest, sell to our guest, basically support them so that they can get value, we should tease something in the beginning, have it prepared, and then provide the value at the end. And the third one is we have to play to the bots. We can do all the things that we need to do, but if nobody clicks on our podcast, then we're not going to be seen or heard. And then we don't get the 2 things that we really want most in life as a podcaster, to make an income and to make an impact.
Impact is the so important thing, right? You're never going to be an impact influencer if you're hidden. It's just never going to happen.
So you got to play to the bots.
Yeah.
Here, let's take a quick break. And then I want to dive into video, if we should do it or not, and how to do it best. And then we'll talk about just how to have the most binge-worthy podcast. And we'll be right back. Hey, my friend, as you know, this episode is sponsored by my company, growyourshow.com. We want you to be able to have the best tools at your disposal without costing you a whole arm and a leg. So right now you can get a free list of vetted equipment that like mics, mixers, webcams, sound treatment, editing software, everything that you need. I created the whole PDF with direct purchase links just to save you time and money, to help it be more convenient for you. So this free PDF will help you skip all the guesswork. If it's on there, it's vetted and approved by yours truly. And if it's not on there, it's probably not worth the money. So go ahead and get yours at growyourshow.com/PDF. Let's get back into the show. We're back with Tracy from the Binge Factor. And we've got two main things we really want to pull from her right now. Should we be doing video? And then how do we become binge worthy? So the first one is, Tracy, if I'm a new podcaster, let's say that I started with audio only, is that good enough? Or do I need to be doing video? Why or why not?
So here's the thing. If you started in audio, good for you. Because there's not enough people in audio. It's a smaller playing field than video is. There are billions of videos on YouTube, but there are not billions of podcasts out there. So this is a good place for you to be. And starting in audio is a fantastic model. And there are a lot of auditory learners out there, but there are also a lot of visual learners. And there are a lot of different people who prefer blogs, videos, blogs. Like all of those areas are different learning modalities, thinking about that, right? If I am a video first person, of which I'm personally not, I'm a reader. That is my go-to mode. So if you're delivering a message and it's not in writing, I'm probably not going to see it. That's missing out on a segment of an audience that you could be serving, because there's no reason to not take your podcast and put it into a blog nowadays. There's so much of these things. So I'm a video, audio, blog, and social share, which sounds like a heck of a lot of work, right? But I'm a big proponent of doing all of those things because they help you promote your show. They expand the listener base. They expand your client base. They will achieve your goals faster. But more importantly, they also, if you do that full model, they keep you with the most sustainable length of value you can get from doing the one thing, doing the podcast, right? Doing your interview, doing whatever it is that the purpose of the message that you're sharing, right? We want to get the most out of it by repurposing it. So this is why I start with video, and I recommend most of my clients, and we do. I have about 65 to 70% of my client base is video first. That doesn't mean the audio is not important. In fact, sometimes the video secondary, it's on. The video is just on, but I'm really recording my podcast. I care more about my sound. My mic is really good. All those things are important, but the video is just there because they know that social sharing on video actually has more value than audio sharing. So if I shared an audiogram, which is have you ever done it? It's like a sound wave, but you create it into a video because audio is not actually shareable on social media, but a video file is. And so you just do this. An audiogram will get 3 to 5 times less views, shares, listens, any of those things than an actual video with a human face on it. So you might as well have the video if you're interviewing and you're talking to someone. I want to see you eye to eye, so I'm going to record it. Why not use it? In my early days of my podcast, we didn't. We recorded like this, but we never saved it.
Okay.
So now we do.
I want to ask a follow-up question based on, I have a lot of my podcast clients that listen to this show. And so they'll let me know when they learn something. And I think one of them is thinking right now, Adam told me that the audio is the one that I want to focus on the most. And Tracy's saying that video is really, really important, but it's going to cost me a little bit more money to add the video. If that's the case, if they're already recording with video and we're already doing some videogram, should they increase what they pay us or another team so that the full length video or a 5-minute video or a 2-minute video or a 1-minute video or a 30-second video, any length or multiple different lengths, should they pay the extra money to get video also edited or not? Why or why not?
So here's the thing. Look, if it's a budget issue, live stream. Don't worry about the video quality, because in a live stream, everyone's really forgiving. Like they know that was done live, whatever. It doesn't have to be edited, but you'll be able to take the clips out and use them on social share, and you could edit those and spend the time and energy on those. Those are more valuable to you, perhaps, to promote. So in that particular case, just live stream your recording, fully edit your audio, because it's not good to have bad audio, to have bad sound levels, to have like all of that. I'm not going to be patient with you, and I'm certainly not going to binge on your show if your audio is not good. I would rather you spent the money and time on audio editing than I would on video editing, because you can put a lot of stuff into social video, into YouTube, and nobody cares.
And
so it's not as valuably important. You're not creating a work of art.
Sorry, if it's not a price issue, if it's not a money issue, if we've got plenty of money, then what should we be thinking?
So if you've got plenty of money, then you should be thinking about having multiple cameras on. Now, the editing of it, it's just a great way to cut when you need to cut, and you can go to another camera angle, and it just makes it easier, because if you get jump cuts and like over edited, it can be too much for people. Like it's too disconcerting. But by having separate camera angles, and you've got like a main camera, really good quality camera, by the way, and then use an iPhone, like get the vertical so you could use it on TikTok, so you could use it on Instagram, so that you can use those others for the shorts, for the cuts, then you're really going to be spending more time on the social output of the video, which is actually more valuable to you in the long run. The editing of the video, I'd say spend the money if you can, if your channel is valuable to you. So in other words, if you've got followers on your channel, if you've got clients are following you, and your job is to be a professional, you need to be a professional. If that's not your job, then it doesn't really matter. If my job is to just sit here on a Monday morning and motivate you for your week, it's better that I show up and do that than it is if I spend all the time and energy editing it and excruciatingly making sure it goes out and it's perfect. That's not as important. Find out what's important in the scope of what you do. But here's the thing. Social video, social feeds are not followed or used after the fact. A YouTube channel is like an archive of all you've done for your company. I can go to your channel and I can go back through, I can binge on things, I can find you, there's an archive of it. Your website, blog, great archive of everything you put out there, what you stand for, what you mean, ways for me to find you, ways for me to buy products from you at the same time that I'm reading those. Those are really valuable. And because YouTube is owned by Google, by putting a YouTube video in my Google blog, in my blog that I want Google to rank in search engine optimization for my website, I'm going to get more traffic for my site from visual learners and written learners, right? The two people. So that's more valuable to spend your money. If I decide where to spend my money, I would spend it on the blog versus the video.
Okay.
Because it's going to have more long-term value to your business at the end of the day, because those keywords, all those things are driving long-term search traffic to you as a business, not just to your show. But social video out there, your Instagram feed's gone. Like TikTok, it's gone tomorrow. 3 hours later, it's old. So overspending on that side when you're not an influencer already, not worth it. If you are an influencer, it's where you drive the most traffic, you need to spend more time and money there. You got to weight it based on what your business goals are.
Let's move to the question that I think the listener might be having for right now. You mentioned that video helps it to be able to be binge-worthy. You mentioned that it helps you to be able to be seen, videogram versus audiogram, 5 times the difference. And you mentioned that you have to have good audio quality if you want to be binge-worthy. Earlier in the episode, you mentioned like not very many people are going to decide to listen to dozens of your episodes if you have shitty audio. So
not going to happen.
With that in mind, what are the top 2, 3, 4 things that we might need to do if we want to have our content binge-worthy?
Right. So to have binge-worthy content, you need to think about the fact that I want someone to listen to as much of my advice as possible. Because before I know it, they're quoting me to other people, which is sharing my show with more people. But they're also thinking about, Tracy wouldn't do that. Adam wouldn't do that. Like they're thinking about it in their head. what would Adam do? And the next thing you know, they're buying from you. That's where we want to get to, this place where they've decided they must buy from us. They must follow us. They must join our group, our communities, our memberships. They must do it because we've gotten in their head. And that happens in an audio way much faster than it does when we're following someone on social and we're interrupted by a bunch of other things, because it's so immersive. It's hitting us right in our brain center and our emotional center. And our voices, this is where AI will never replace us. Our voices and our emotions and passion for what we talk about cannot be faked. Our ears know the difference between a real human being and not. Now, that doesn't mean our dopamine wasn't raised and we were tricked into it. It can happen, but it can't happen in a long, sustained way. And that's the difference. So if I want someone to binge on me because I want them to buy from me, then I've got to make something worthy of that. And the best way for me to do that is to continually deliver value, to not be self-centered about what I'm doing and talk all about me. If I talk about me, I'm talking about it in relevance to you, making that story something valuable you can learn from, making my experience something you can avoid, right? So those are great ways to be able to create that connection points in it. And you do want your stories. You want you to be a connection point to it in the process. But you also need to make sure that they're going to do something in a takeaway that's valuable to them, because once they get a success from something we mentioned, they're going to come back for more. And then they're going to rave about us to other people and say, it's because of this Adam said on his show that I became successful. That was the tipping point that changed my life. It was, and it isn't even if a guest says it, that's okay, because they're still attributing it to you bringing them that guest. That's okay. So we don't want our guests to not shine. We do want that to happen.
Tracy, one of the things you said scared me.
Uh-oh.
And there's some AI that's coming out that is kind of in beta testing right now, as we record anyway. By the time some people listen to this, it's long gone. They're like, oh my gosh, this has been out forever. The thing that I wanted to talk about is there is a AI that is going to be able to do on a massive scale our voice in a different language. So for example, I am learning Spanish, but I'm nowhere near fluent. But I'd like to have a Spanish podcast. So what we can do is we can take our audio from what we already have, import it into this AI, and it has our own voice speaking in another language, so that now we can post it on. A thing that you mentioned, Tracy, was if we are listening to AI, we won't get the emotion, we won't get the voice inflections. And I'm curious if you would suggest that I don't utilize that to be one of the first podcasts in the podcasting space in Mandarin Chinese and some other languages, French and others.
Well, look, overdubbed, dubbing shows, right? Dubbing TV shows in other languages. It happens all the time. People watch Friends all over the world in their own language, right? It's not the same experience. But that doesn't mean it's not better than something else that's out there. So when we first did our 3D print podcast, we were really popular in Brazil, but there was no podcast in their own language that they could utilize. So it's better that if they could get it and understand us completely than not getting it at all. So that's the difference that we want to make, is that, look, if there's a ton of Spanish speaking shows talking about what you're talking about that are more attuned and better personalities to the Spanish speaking audience, then you just should not bother. They're going to make a better connection point. They're a true, authentic connection, Spanish to Spanish, right? But if what you have to teach them, what you have to share isn't available, that's super valuable. You're making something available that they would never be able to find, perspective that they would never be able to find in their own language. You should do that. But keep in mind, it's not going to have the same impact as if you could speak it yourself. It's just not. To expect it to, it's not going to have the same return. Now, what I'm seeing right now from some of these tools is that they cost way more than producing your own podcast in English. And I would much rather you concentrate on making a great English speaking podcast, if that's where your client base is coming from, than spend money to do something just to be the first to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. And so I've been learning Spanish for a while and daily practice for 260 something days so far. And I definitely want to be able to serve Spanish speaking podcasts. And I'm thinking to myself, you said, is it better that they could get your value? Because sometimes it's awkward or weird when you watch a show that it's being dubbed over with somebody else's voice. Sometimes it's weird because the lips don't match the sounds. Sometimes it's weird because even the emotion doesn't match exactly. It doesn't come across. Like, for example, if I'm watching something that's in English, but it was in Spanish, Money Heist is a show on Netflix that I love. And I think it's all in Spanish. And I do love it. Sometimes I notice, I look at it and I'm like, I don't think that's what that person really meant. Or I don't, sometimes there were small pieces. But overall, I love the show. I enjoy the show. I know that it's dubbed in another language. And so I think...
But you'd rather have the information. And that's what I'm saying is if you've got that kind of show that your audience really needs the information you have, the impact that you have, share it with them, figure out a way to make that work. And hopefully the AI will get better and better and it will sound more like you at the end of the day. But the reality is that they do know the difference. Like thinking about this, when you watch a dubbed show, it's more brain work for you.
Yeah, a little bit.
Right. And then you're not in your emotional center. You're thinking too much, which is why you don't enjoy it as much. And so that enjoyment leads to less conversion. That lack of enjoyment, right? It's going to lead to less conversion no matter what, because I'm not just being emotionally touched by the words. It's just not happening in the same way. I have to now think through the words.
Makes sense. So today, I should say on this episode, because actually my listener's a binge listener, so they're going to hear 70 episodes right now. So it's not today, it's this episode. On this episode, we really touched on three major things. One is that we need to put the content of our podcast all about our listener. And that goes to the artwork, as Tracy said, that goes with the intro, the outro, that goes with our guests, that goes with the questions that we ask the guest, our show description, which is 4,000 characters. There's so many different pieces. It needs to be all about the guest and less about you. And then the second thing that we really talked about was the video, making sure that we are using video, how to use video, what we should be putting our money to for the different types of learners that we have for our type of content. As well as the third thing was just how to be binge-worthy, how to get people to listen to multiple. You gave tons of tips. And I also want to share with the listener that if you're a podcaster, and you better be, you're listening to this show, go check out the Binge Factor if you want even more content on just how to make your podcast the type that people will binge it and listen to multiple episodes. That's going to make a difference for you. So I've made sure that Tracy's link to her podcast is down in the show notes. Her company website is down in the show notes. Any social media that she wanted to share is already down in the show notes, and also her bio. So you can get to know her a little bit more and connect with her on social, or go check out her podcast, The Binge Factor. I will see you on the next episode because you are binging hasta pronto. By the way, one way to ensure that you don't miss out on great content that we're producing on a regular basis is to make sure you're subscribed to the show. You need to be subscribed or following the Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to it in order not to miss all of that. And before I let you go, I need to mention, because a lot of people are asking, do you help? Can you help me with this? And the answer is yes. My company actually does it. It's called Grow Your Show. And you can find that at growyourshow.com. Our clients, they call us the easy button for podcaster because they simply have to record their episode. And they know that every single thing else is done for them. We sweat the hard stuff so you can be the star of your show. And if you would like help to make sure that we're editing and publishing and promoting and doing your social media, it's all in one place. And I think it's pretty affordable. You'll have to take a look for yourself. Just go to growyourshow.com and check us out. And by the way, I'll see you on the next episode.